Experts warn that we could run out of avocados in as little as 3 weeks if President Trump closes the border with Mexico, which is especially bad because everyone knows that Canadian avocados taste like reindeer poop.
April is Stress Awareness Month, which means your 25-year-old coworker feels justified in complaining about how stressful it is to wait for an Uber when your phone's about to die.
President Trump cut off foreign aid to El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. But don't worry, he plans to personally toss them a few rolls of paper towels.
A debate about Brexit in British Parliament was interrupted by naked climate change protesters. British politicians hadn't been that appalled since someone used lemon and honey in their tea.
That is outrageous. Michelle Obama's memoir, Becoming, is on track to be the best-selling memoir of all time. There's already a sequel in the works called Michelle Obama and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
In their first television interview since coming forward, 2 women who accused Virginia Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax of sexual misconduct were interviewed by Gayle King. Gayle was sure to give everyone a fascinating peek into the women's favorite recipes for cauliflower crust pizza.
And finally, despite being nominated, Jussie Smollett skipped this weekend's NAACP Image Awards. He said he had to stay home and organize his fraud drawer. That was really hard for me to say. Fraud drawer. That's my New York accent. I wanted to call it a fraud draw, and I realized, this is professional. His fraud drawer. The Trump Report starts now.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Yes, indeed. Welcome to the Trump Report. It is I, Christian Bladt, joined as often by Tamra Brown.
I've been
demoted.
Was that passive aggressive, Scott?
It was a little bit of a demotion.
Joined when she feels like it.
Well, next week when Chelsea's on, I'll say joined as sometimes by Chelsea Galicia. I think she's been on once in the last 2 months. So I think Jussie Smollett has been on more recently than Chelsea. But, you're also, what, I'm the only one who's always here.
Did I miss Jussie Smollett last week when I was gone?
Yeah, just a good show.
Yeah, that was great.
No.
Really? You should have seen.
Did he have some interesting thoughts in the Mueller report?
No, you should have just heard what happened on his way to the studio. I'll just leave it at that. But also here often, Scott... I always called you Scott Brown because of our friend in the chat, our Scott Brown. Scott Moore.
Yes, I'm working my way back up. I'm starting to have regular attendance again so I can get back to that coveted position of nearly always.
Yeah. Meanwhile, if you think back to Trump versus Hillary, we have our friend Stephen Helmkamp, who's never been on the Trump Report. The guy he liked won, and he's just never come. He's like, great, I'm going to go out on top. Anyway, we do have people in the chat, so if you're watching live, thank you. And give us your thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, all of the above, please. And we will try and work you into the conversation. There's a lot of ground to cover. Since we actually could have gotten to this last week, but we ran out of time. It seemed like, Mueller report, exonerated, everything. I'm the hugest, most innocent, most innocent, greatest guy ever. Let's go ahead and repeal Obamacare. That seemed like one of those, wait, you just don't waste any time when you go in on that. But if we had talked about it last week, we'd be basically taking a lot of it back because Scott's best friend, Mitch McConnell, is now saying, I wouldn't bring us that because, the repeal and replace... You need something to replace it with.
Right.
And we don't have anything. Tamra, does it surprise you that Mitch McConnell, considering that we've had Obamacare for maybe not 10 years, but 9 years, 8-9 years, at no point did he go, we really got to get that. We really need to get that replacement together.
It does surprise me that Trump conceded that they'll wait until 2020 to start repealing it. So, yes, that does surprise me. And does it surprise me that Mitch McConnell, that rather than put together a new health care plan, they've been a little busy, I guess, with Mueller report and some border security debates and such. So I guess Healthcare has been pushed aside a little bit, elbowed out of the way.
Yeah, it's like, we'll get to you. You're on the back burner, to the back burner, to the back. Don't worry. We'll get back to you. Scott, do you feel like somewhere in the Republican Party there is at least one cool head who said, like, okay, if you try and repeal that now, you've got a year and a half until Election Day, so people will start to feel the repercussions of taking away all these things that they do legitimately like, pre-existing conditions, all that sort of thing. Do you think that do you think that there's at least one person with sense in the Republican Party? That's the hot take I'm asking for.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's two. When you think about, there's two attorneys general that have signed on with the court briefing saying they do not want Obamacare overturned.
Right.
Because
and thank you, by the way, for not saying what I would have said, which is attorney generals. I definitely 100% would have said that, but I know that what you said is right.
But so I think it's a losing battle for Republicans, and they know that. And I don't know where Trump thought in his head that this was now a good idea to push this. I think it goes back to his theory of the chaos theory, where his MO is, let's cause a lot of chaos and then come back and say, oh no, just kidding, I'm going to make sure that we're not doing anything until after Election Day, so he can kind of come back in with looking like the savior, like he did with the Special Olympics last week, like he did, which we'll get to, with the threat of shutting down the border. Like everything that he does is always, let me make some chaos here and then come back in and save everything, and then I can look like a hero. And
I mean, well done on the Special Olympics, because all you got to do is, can you believe that this president is trying to cut funding for the Special Olympics? I was almost going to say, which we know that that's not what he calls it. He calls it the something else Olympics because he doesn't care. But he's like, wait a minute, I think we need this. But it was an interesting stance that Betsy DeVos took, Tamra, which was, we're going to cut the government funding because they raise so much money in the private sector. They're good. They don't need our money. I think the same could be said for a lot of organizations, non-charitable, by the way. Like, I don't know, the Defense Department, just picking one off the top of my head. The Donald J. Trump Committee for Re-election. Also, there's just so many. I mean, should we start allocating money, sort of like a need basis? It's like, how much do you really need?
How much do you really need? It's
well, we go to not we, they go to the departments. You'll basically get circle one of these numbers. What's the closest to your operating budget? What do you really need from us?
Yeah, it's interesting with. I feel like every time there's a GoFundMe for a whatever a certain cause, it's always just and. It's amazing how quickly money can be raised for things. It makes you wonder, like, oh, if only there was a some sort of government way that every citizens were, certain amounts of money were taken from citizens and used for purposes that help everybody. That would be a really interesting program to implement, wouldn't it?
That's a crazy idea. No, but I mean, that legitimately has been pitched, and really the micro scale, like you put in your tax returns, check here if you want $1 to go towards it or whatever. But I think it was as simple as like $1 is going to go to this. And if everybody checks it, it's going to help. But, obviously the federal government knows how to spend our money better than we do, and look, you look around, you look at credit card debt. In some cases, you're going to be right. But I think for the most part, I like to think that our budget is financed by a college freshman who gets that signs up for that credit card on the first week of school because they got a free hat, and they're like, oh my God, this is great. I just got all this stuff. Look at all this.
I would love to know, just for the sake of, somebody should do a study, just for the sake of curiosity, if we as taxpayers had the options to allocate where our funds were going. I personally would probably not put my tax money into the Department of Defense. That is the least of my concern as far as where my tax dollars are going. So what I would wonder is if there was some sort of study to see like what everybody would prioritize, where Americans would prioritize their money had they had the option to do that. I wonder what it would be.
Is there a Department of Interpretive Dance? Because if there is, I want my whole check going right in there.
Yep.
Scott, this seems like another one of those. You hear so many common sense ideas thrown around in terms of politics. This seems like one that will never happen because of the simple fact that it's like, well, once you open the floodgates, this dollar goes to that, then that dollar is going to go here. And, to some extent, look, I don't think that the Department of Defense needs more money. I would like them to have some kind of operating, but I would like them to be able to keep the lights on just in case. You don't know what's going on.
The one lonely janitor.
the Maytag repairman, for an old reference. Yeah, he's just there. He's like, it's all right. There are those LED lights. They'll come back on eventually.
We've been there for like 50 years.
And we talked, surprisingly, we talked a lot about term limits last week. These are all things that make so much sense, but that's exactly why they're never going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
Because if it was that easy, it would have already it would have been done. But politicians like to have their hands out for their own pet projects.
I mean, this is why
all the other things.
Chelsea would bridle at this if she was here, but she's not. But I'm like, they're all pretty friendly. Everybody's kind of. It's like one of those things where it's like, we really want term limits, but the Democrats don't want it, and the Democrats are like, we want it too, but it's the Republican. It's like none of them want it, but so there's like, you go ahead, we'll just blame each other, and then it'll never happen, and everybody wins. In a situation where I'm not quite sure who wins, President Trump has been saying for the past week or so that he's really thinking about closing the border. The border with Mexico, by the way, don't be confused. He's not going to close the border between North and South Dakota, although that would be interesting. But he seems like he was really inclined to do it. But now he's put the spin on it where Congress needs to act for me to not close the border. So it always comes back to that damn wall. And I know that Storage Yard resident, it's the only thing that's important to him. And God love him, that's what matters to him. And look, it's the only thing that mattered to Ann Coulter. That and selling books, let's be honest. Right. But politically, that was just the thing. It's like, Trump just needs to build that wall. And then when he didn't, she's like, great, well, I'll sell some more books then. And you could actually just stack a bunch of Ann Coulter books. I've just come up with it.
Right?
That
there we go.
There's your wall.
Yeah. But I don't know. Well, let's try and look at this through the silver lining. Tamra, what are some of the good things about having the border closed with Mexico? There have to be some, right?
The good things?
Yeah, there has to be something. There's Trump's not going to do it if it's 100%.
I suppose if you are strongly opposed to sombreros, you'd be...
Which I am.
Let's see.
I only like 4-piece mariachi bands too.
If you are an aspiring major league pitcher and you feel that your skills are overshadowed by talent that is coming from the south of our border, then maybe I would be in favor of it.
That's true. Yeah, there's a third baseman from Nebraska somewhere who's like, "Yep, that's right. Keep him coming. Keep him away from coming." Yeah. But it seems like, I don't know. I mean, look, we live here in Southern California, and I mean, I've known people that at various times have lived south of the border and worked in, not necessarily San Diego, but worked in California, and it's just, go figure, it's cheaper to live down there.
Right.
And so just the amount of border crossing by U.S. citizens that just happen to live there, and also, Mexican citizens that, are just crossing every day, trucks, there was a joke at the top of the show about avocados. In a lot of states, avocados are too expensive. But here in California, every house comes with hot water, cold water, and then there's a third faucet for liquid avocado. You might not know that if you don't live here, but you have to supply it yourself. And if they stop coming, it's going to be a problem. Do you feel like this is one of those items where you...
What, Christian? What are you trying to say?
Do you feel like this is one of those items where President Trump doesn't actually have any indication? He just knows that it sounds tough. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to just close the border.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, and that's why he's kind of backtracking now, because he knows logistically, realistically, shutting down an entire border is not feasible. Like you were saying, you have too many people that cross the border every day that are legal U.S. citizens that go back and forth. You have people who have, homes down there that travel. You have economic things. It's just too many things that you just couldn't shut it down without having repercussions to our own economy. And it's like he purposely wants to keep throwing stuff out there to sound tough, but at the end of the day, he knows that it's really not possible. And again, it goes back to our MO, the chaos. And he wants to stir it up and threaten and make people feel like this is a possibility. But, when it's all said and done at the end of the day, he's not going to be able to do that.
I think it would behoove him to just say, just say he did. Like the majority of the people that are in favor of shutting down the border or putting up a wall, it's not like they're super into fact checking anyway.
Right.
So I think he should just say, we did it. We closed the border.
Closed the border. We built the wall.
We built the wall.
It's all
done. And then they're
Yep,
happy.
You're welcome.
Democrats are happy.
I love the
Everybody's
idea-
happy. That's
I
the
love the
solution.
idea of
I think I just solved
I think you did just solve it.
politics.
I love the idea of turning into the skid, and yeah, you tweet out from the actual the POTUS Twitter. It's like, congratulations on all the hardworking people who got the wall built, and then you have a picture of the Great Wall of China from like the 1890s, like
you go.
very clearly, and then people are like, "Oh, that's great, we have the wall."
Right.
You know what? I feel safer.
And now the wall's built. We can reopen the border.
Yeah, right, exactly.
There you
That's
go.
all it took. We
Done.
built the wall in a week.
Yep.
Every-
Said it was closed.
Yeah.
It's open. Nobody's gonna know the difference.
Everybody wins.
Yeah.
And I don't know how often you feel sorry for Republicans, Scott, but if you're
No.
if you're if you're a congressperson or a senator, but let's be honest, they're congressmen. It's mostly a joke. But if you're a congressperson or a senator and you happen to be a Republican, and you're just trying to legislate, and you want to get reelected the next time your name's on the ballot, you're just like, what is it with this guy? Like, I can't even talk about immigration without him, throwing stuff in here. But everybody, almost everybody stays in line.
Yeah.
They very rarely do people speak out. I think you have every once in a while somebody gets out of line, and then they have their their weekend pass to Mar-a-Lago revoked.
And then by Monday they're back on the supporting the agenda again.
Yeah, I mean, and the worst, and we talked about this, is Ted Cruz. He said your father probably had something to do with JFK being assassinated. And, like, even if you are 100% in with this guy, like, just have some self-respect. One, shave the beard. Two,
Yes.
Two,
Has that not happened yet? God.
I don't think,
Terrible.
I actually don't know. I need to avert my eyes. It's if you've ever seen Clash of the Titans,
The
if you
chin
look,
rash has to clear up before he can let the
That's
beard.
true. So he's-
So he can shave the beard.
Anyway, I don't know. I think that there's always concerns, but you hear something like Trump wants to shut the border, and here's all the things that'll be bad about it. I'm like, I don't believe it. I just don't think it's actually going to happen.
It'll never happen.
And
No.
I guess that so many things, enough things happen where you're just like, oh, it's not going to happen. At some point, you're going to end up in trouble because it's like, well, we're just going to sneak that one through and this one and that one. But I don't know. I don't see that one actually happening. But.
Nope.
Let us know in the chat, whether you're watching live or the archive version, if you think that that is actually going to happen. Now, as we also mentioned at the top of the show, he as in President Trump, has indeed cut aid to El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala.
Three Mexican countries.
Well, that's what I
Let me
wanted
just
to mention.
clarify.
So the first thing to say about that is when that happened, and we do have this graphic, and I know we don't use a lot of photos here, but this was one that we needed. And let's be honest, it is not the responsibility of these three people on the screen what is on the chyron beneath them. It's I'm sure it's a union job, especially in New York City. So it's somebody's job to make sure that they write that and they get it on the screen. But it does reflect on the outlet, and it would be just as funny if it was MSNBC or CNN. But here we have.
It's
Trump-
funnier on this one though.
Sure, I'm saying it's not like it wouldn't be funny on one of those other
No, but
places.
it's
So
better fitting here.
Trump cuts U.S. aid to 3 Mexican countries, and I was able to come up with the second one, which is obviously New Mexico. I still don't know what the third one is.
I was gonna
though.
say Old Mexico.
Well,
it was
yeah, but
Old
that's
Mexico, New
regular- that's
Mexico,
regular
and
Mexico.
No, that could be regular Mexico.
Is there Super Mexico somewhere that I just didn't know about? Is Grande Mexico? And I don't know. I mean, if you're President Trump and you really feel like the migrants at the border is a problem, and you feel like El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala aren't doing enough, sure, that's gonna at least make them notice. Like, yeah, let's take away your allowance. Let's see if without your allowance you do a good job of you doing the dishes and and just you earn your allowance back. Make us feel like you care about us, El Salvador, which is funny to think about. But yeah, I know this actually is a bigger story because of this Fox News graphic. And I'm going to keep an eye out, and as soon as there is a great CNN or MSNBC, we'll use it on the show. And if it's this level, but
We get some fake news.
I mean, that's pretty fake news right there. But how many people watching this even noticed? I mean,
No.
it's
Well, that's why I think it's funny when Fox does it and not MSNBC, because that's exactly the point. I'm not saying
Right.
all of their viewers wouldn't notice, but I have a feeling a lot more of theirs wouldn't notice
Oh yeah.
than CNN's or MSNBC's. And I'm not saying, and the only reason is because when you have this opinion that people crossing the border are these dangerous criminals, that is an incorrect, uninformed, shows that you don't have the knowledge of the reality of what those countries are, and so that's why you would also
Right. That's
not
why
realize
you would go with three Mexican countries. and pick-
countries.
Yeah,
Oh, sure, that
of
makes
course.
sense.
Yeah, and that's part of the issue which we've talked about. And the fact is that one is we've caused a lot of the issues down there. Two, by taking away the money, you're actually kind of doing the opposite of what you think you're doing, because now you're withholding aid from them that helps stabilize their country. So now with less money and less
More people that need
people
to
that will
come
be
seek
fleeing
asylum.
to seek asylum because of either the dangers of the society there, because you have less government support when it comes to fighting crime and everything, but now you have less job opportunities and other things, so now you have more of a reason for people to escape and try to flee and seek asylum up north. So I mean, you're doing the opposite of what you would be intending to do, just like closing the border would do too. It would be doing the complete opposite of what you intended.
So what you're saying is it would be like when my parents took my allowance away and I just sold weed at school.
Yeah.
So I'm going to find a way.
Right, you're
get
going to
the
find a
money.
way, however it takes. And the same thing, if people are not in a safe place, as we've talked about ad nauseum, people do not want to have to leave their home and their families and everything they know behind to make this unsafe journey to cross the border. Nobody wants to do that. They get to a point of such desperation, and that's why they have to do it. And I know a lot of people that try to just get regular work visas that are from Mexico, and the amount of work that goes into it. And then you come here to live with a legal visa, and you still have trouble because you have no credit, because Mexican government is different on how you obtain property and cars and everything else. So you start with zero credit, which means you have no ability to even get things here. And so you have, it's a hard struggle for people even doing all the right
correctly.
things because of those type of hurdles. So it's like nobody that comes here has it easy, and there's this false pretense that it's so easy and that it's simple for everyone to come over, and they're stealing jobs and they're living luxuriously and they're stealing
I knew this guy that I worked with. He owns 3 homes
Yeah.
in Mexico, and he sends all the money back to his family, and they're buying more property.
yeah, it's
Show
not
me
an
the
easy
receipts.
process.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think that let's just say there's a lot of misconceptions out there. I wanted to move on before we ran out of time. Our Scott Brown wanted us to save this topic until he wasn't in the car with his son anymore. But wanted to introduce a new segment called Good Week, Bad Week. And we're going to decide if somebody's had a good week or a bad week. Tamra, Joe Biden, good week?
You know what? I'm going to say here's the thing. Obviously, he's been under such intense scrutiny and fire, and it's terrible. But I do feel like he is handling it swimmingly. His in every single person that's been accused of any sort of sexual misconduct of anywhere on the spectrum. The majority of the defenses are always denial. Sometimes a little bit of, but I apologize if somebody felt that way. He sort of acknowledged, like he says, he kind of said, I didn't recall this, but he also said, he phrased things in a way that's basically like, I may not have been aware that what I was doing was inappropriate and made someone feel uncomfortable. And I feel like that's exactly the right thing to say, because that's where we are right now in this whole sort of, women speaking up about their experiences, is that understanding that with a completely well-intentioned and not even meaning to do any harm to anybody person, just for the lack of the society that you were brought up in, and the lack of understanding of somebody's perspective who may be smaller than you and have less power than you, and just not being aware of the position that you're putting that person in. He's really trying, I believe, to listen. And he said, you know, his job right now is just to listen and hear where these women are coming from. I just feel like that's exactly the right response.
I think that if he were, I don't know, if he were running at a different time, or if he were maybe a different party, I think that this is such there's such a hyper focus on this issue, and I'm not saying that there shouldn't be. It is something that is so much in the news right now that it's not that I think that there's no way that somebody like Joe Biden comes out of this. You know, what did he plagiarize? And you know, nobody talks about that. You know, there's plenty of things that he's done, and you're just like, all right, well, let's see how it goes. And you know, what do people think of the allegations? Honestly, when they started to happen, I'm just reminded that there was a tape of President Trump where he, you know, said what he would grab, and he's the president. So right now, to me, this makes Joe Biden the front runner, because if there's allegations against you, clearly that's something that, you know, I don't know, it gets some kind of, I don't know if he gets a pass, or just in general, I don't think it's right, but I wonder if people are just exhausted by allegations. And
I don't think it's exhaust. I think it is that as we are, I'll say, enlightening to marginalized people's realities, listening to what people, different races their experience has been, and as we are, so for the first time, giving people who haven't had a voice, I think we are slowly getting to understand, you know, the full grasp of things, and as we are going through this process, we're also taking things at what they are, and by that I mean Justin Fairfax was accused of assault, and so that is assault, which is very different than a creepy shoulder rub, you know, like, and I feel like people aren't putting those two things in together. They're taking them for what they are.
I think that, you know, when you had the entertainment industry, the Me Too allegations, you have Harvey Weinstein, you know, and then there's not a ton, there's plenty that we have, but then you would hear a lot that are, you know, Aziz Ansari went on a bad date.
Exactly.
You know? So, and that, I believe that woman legitimately felt uncomfortable, but it's not the same thing.
He's not being tarred and feathered for rape or assault or anything like that. I think it's being taken as face value. It certainly hurt his career because it was embarrassing.
Sure.
But I don't think he's been accused of something that anything other than a bad date. Yeah.
Also, but also for Joe Biden, it would be difficult to deny a lot of this, because it's like, yeah, here's the picture of the shoulder rub, and then some of the people are like, you know what, I didn't really take. Some of the women are just like, I didn't really take it that way. I understand what the picture looks like, but in the moment, you know what, it didn't really feel like that. What were you going to say, Scott?
I mean, I would say, I think last year there was a rush to judgment, and there wasn't a dividing line. That was part of the issue, is that if you were accused of rape versus giving someone a shoulder rub or a hug or whatever, they were all kind of lumped together. And I think there has been a little bit of a shift in that over the past year, that there are a little bit more gray areas.
I agree. That's what I'm saying. Like, as we've moved along, listening and understanding this, we're getting to be a little bit more enlightened at what... Yeah,
I mean, you know, again, it's not in the political world, but you had some things that happened pretty quickly. Like Chris Hardwick gets fired by AMC. He was hired back. You have, and these weren't allegations, these were old tweets. James Gunn is fired by Disney to direct a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. They've now rehired him. So I think that there was a moment in time where it was like, oh my God, everything, we have to fire everybody. I don't know what to do, you know? And I think people are trying to navigate this, and I'm sure it's difficult.
Those are corporations that were looking for their financial interest rather than what is the right path to take right now. That they were just trying to save their asses financially rather than say, like, what's the ethical thing to do here?
But, and I mean, and I know Chris Hardwick, and I know those situations, and actually I was going to say, not name dropping, but we met Joe Biden doing a shoot one time, and he was very much like hugging everybody, and that's, I'm not saying it's right.
No.
But part of the issue is that, and part of the issue of him being a front runner is the fact, if he does choose to run, is that he does have a long history, and in some instances that's good because he actually has experience. He's been around for 40 plus years in the Senate, and he has a lot of experience. But on the other hand, now you have a whole bunch of things that you can go back to, and the thing that he has is a lot of baggage besides any of this stuff, which I think will sort of blow over because it's just dirty politics. I think this particular case, but you do have the Anita Hill stuff that happened back in 91. You have other things that are going to be dredged up again that compared to when he ran with Obama in 2008 and 2012 and as vice president was not really looked at in the same way that you would as a candidate for president in this era now of Me Too. That I do believe that's going to be a difficult thing for him to kind of resolve with Democrats today, especially younger Democrats that are going to see that and see, okay, well, he has some negative history there with the way he might have treated women and also with Anita Hill and some other, and also his abortion views that have shifted over time but were very anti. So I think there's going to be some trouble there with him if he does decide to run, and that's just going to come with it with the long history that he has. And
this sort of feeds into what we were talking about last week in terms of career politicians. If you have been in Washington or in elective office for that long, you know, the national opinion on an issue like abortion was very different in the 70s. You know, what if you took a majority poll, I think it would be different than it was now. So you're reflecting the interests of your constituents. And yes, you know what? I would hope that if you are in any kind of office for 40 plus years, you have a different outlook, you know, on your way out than you did going in.
Absolutely.
You know, I would hope that you see things that change your mind, you know, and I think there's plenty of people that don't, you know. But go ahead.
No, and I was going to say, I mean, we've seen that more in modern day because we saw even with Obama and Hillary Clinton that were against gay marriage and things like that kind of shifted as well. So, yes, I do agree with that, but I think for some of the younger base that are hungry for something that they feel is supporting them, looking back at that could be troublesome for some of those people to reconcile, seeing his history and also his history with women and some other things that are going to come back.
I think this is all everything as that's come out about any candidate so far is all going to be a wash once the debates start. Once we actually see these people on TV and personality and ideas, and they appeal to us personally through our television, I feel like that's when this is all going to be water under the bridge once that starts.
And those are going to start soon because what we have, like, you know, 15 people debates somewhere in the summer. So,
and I agree with you on that one too.
Yeah, I do think when they start actually talking about it, but you know, and then who goes for the not really the soundbite, but who goes for the quick image? You know, like, well, I don't want to shake Joe Biden's hand. You know, does Amy Klobuchar like lean way back?
That's
you know,
and I feel like if that happens, that's going to reflect badly on her, not on him.
Right, and you know, the only way to make sure she does it is if everyone on her staff tells her not to, and then she's like, well, now I have to because they're idiots.
Because they double dog dared
me. They work for me. But yeah, and I think that again, there's different kinds of allegations. I mean, these aren't. And I don't think people seem to care about infidelity anymore. But these aren't stories about Joe Biden, you know, having, you know, a parade of mistresses and things.
Exactly.
You know? This is like, you know, an awkward hug that maybe somebody didn't feel comfortable with.
Right.
But again, in other cases, people were actually okay with. R. Scott Brown does have a great comment. It's not like he was smelling the hair of a corpse that he had secreted away in a hidden closet.
Well,
So I always want to make sure that we include our friend R. Scott Brown.
I wish he was alluding to something like.
Well, just in general, you know. I don't know. Was that
I think it was Cory Booker, right? He's the what's the word? He's the I can't think of. Never mind.
Nobody's sniffing Cory Booker's hair.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I don't know.
Has a thing for dead people, whatever that's called.
Necrophiliac.
Necrophiliac. Yeah.
Wow. Should I have not known that?
I know. I was like, I wasn't aware of that.
But so I don't know. I have two-part
What
question.
if I just started a rumor with that all of a sudden? Like tomorrow the news broke. Like Cory Booker's a necrophiliac.
I think we should clip that out and put it on our Twitter account. Just you saying Cory Booker's a necrophiliac. See, now you said it and I said it.
Right.
So clearly, there would be a little montage. And then we could put Alice Cooper's I Love the Dead underneath it. See, I think that we can really get this to catch on. Hashtag
Cory Booker is into dead people.
Yeah. All right. You heard it here first. And I don't think you heard it here last. Because now someone's able to say, it's like, you know, I heard somewhere that Cory Booker How upset would Chelsea be right now? That she's like, I can't believe you guys are even saying this. You know what she'd be really upset about is my next question.
I was going to say, you said Bernie Sanders was. And
well, my next question is, what about the idea that this story is being motivated, the Joe Biden allegations, by Team Bernie? Scott, I'll ask you first.
Well, I mean, that's what I was going to say, is that we all know politics is incredibly dirty, and at this point, you do have Democrat, and well, Bernie Sanders is not really a Democrat, but you have, inter-party people trying to take out other people, so it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it is a dirty game, and you got to do what you can to hopefully knock the other person out of the way who seems to be the greatest threat. And if you were looking at the polling and you thought, okay, if Sanders is 2 and Biden announces a run and he's essentially number 1, then you got to take out that number 1 candidate, because then the other people are much further behind and more diluted. As far as
I mean, to that extent, and again, this is an allegation,
right?
But specifically, an allegation that I remember from 2008, and people looking back, are that the entire birther movement was actually started by, soft money for the Hillary supporters.
Yeah.
They were the ones to be like, I'm pretty sure he wasn't born here.
Right.
So, I think that, obviously the opposition party really goes after somebody, but it can get really dirty. But I mean, the allegations of robocalls that were made in 2000 by the George W. Bush campaign about Senator McCain.
John McCain. Yeah. And that's what I was going to say. I mean, and we had Dr. Metzler on a couple months ago.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. When you have the Republicans are all running in 2016, you have the same thing where you had Republicans saying nasty, horrible things about other ones to get them out. And that is part of the challenge, is that you have to go
like
so
your dad
extreme.
killed JFK.
Yeah, so you go so far to the right or so far to the left, depending on the party, and then you have to come back in the middle when you're running the general. So, I mean, yes, it wouldn't surprise me if something, not to say that he himself was supporting this and saying go after Joe Biden, but it's very easy for people on the team to do that oppo research and come up with whatever they can on right now.
No, I think it's Bernie himself. I think Bernie is calling papers and cable news and saying like, I think they know. I don't know. I mean, what do you think about this idea? And you know what?
I think the difference between Republicans and Democrats is that a Republican candidate says something awful about another Republican candidate, and that person that goes up in favor, whereas a Democratic candidate says something awful about another Democratic candidate, and that person tanks for it.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's accurate. I mean, in terms of Republicans, I mean, Ronald Reagan always said don't shoot inside the tent, but obviously there's no tent left after 2016. And I don't know. I guess it's another one of those things where we'll have to see where it goes. But, I mean, Biden's not even in the race yet. I don't know. If you're Joe Biden, Scott, do you just be like, this is too much of a headache? What I thought I wanted to do this, but this kind of reminded me why I didn't do it last time.
It just goes back to, you do wonder what is taking him so long to make this decision. Probably, I'm sure he's thinking, like, do I want to go through the hassle, and do I want to go for a third time and then not make it? Because this is beyond it for him. It's not like he can say, I'm going to come back in 4 years at 82 and say I'm going to run again. Otherwise, you might as well say Jimmy Carter should run. It's like you're getting to a point.
He's still alive,
right? So I mean,
he's eligible for another term.
He is eligible. So.
Yeah. That's a great idea. I'm gonna float that out there.
Yeah.
Let me see if Jimmy's interested. Yeah. Put down the hammer, Jimmy.
That's right. Come back and be president until you're 100, and there you go.
What a great story that would be.
Or what
Comes back after 40 years.
What if it's a Warren Carter ticket? Jimmy Carter VP for Warren.
I like that.
I like that. I like them apples.
Except you need a VP that's ready
like
to step in
peanuts.
for the president. So I mean, kind of defeats the purpose there.
It's true. Well, I don't know. There's a lot of the fundraising numbers. The reporting deadline has passed, so we're seeing just how much money people started to make early on. Are there? Who do you think? I'll ask you first, Tamra. Who do you think is? There's a lot of people that have declared or are sniffing around the idea of possibly running in terms of the Democrats. Who do you feel is probably the next to be like, oh yeah, no, I'm not connecting with hardly anyone. I'm not getting any money, so I'm just gonna.
Who's the first to bow out?
Yeah, who do you
Is that
think?
what you're asking?
Who do you think's next? Because we've actually had some people bow out who I think, in most cases, I didn't know were actually running. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So who you're asking? Who's gonna?
Yeah.
Who do I
who
think is
do
gonna
you
bow
think's
out?
next? Yeah. And it could, and, it could be Biden because he still hasn't bowed in, but he could bow out.
Could be. I don't know. I mean, this thing is like I can't say who. I can't say who I think has a great chance right now. I think we are still until these debates starts. It's all moot. I think right now. So I have no idea. I personally don't have a I'm not preferring any candidate over another at all. So. I have no idea.
I don't know. I mean, I think until you have debates and a little more movement here. Otherwise, you could say maybe Jay Inslee or maybe Hickenlooper, maybe. But even them, I think they're going to stand.
Hickenlooper's going to spend so much money on those bumper stickers because his name's so long. I mean, just think.
Yeah, I don't see anyone dropping out immediately because I feel like they want to stick with it and see what's going to happen during second quarter, and then once we get into debates and maybe after the first debates over the summer, there might be some people that are gonna be like, okay,
that
we're
Marianne Williamson, is she still?
No,
was her still in it? Did she bow out yet? I know Chelsea loves her. Yeah.
Maybe her. Now, I can't even imagine anyone else because I feel like everyone else is gonna be waiting and they're gonna stick it out, like Andrew Yang
this is more of a hypothetical because you've heard some rumblings that. Go ahead.
Maybe somebody like Kamala who's younger.
Yeah.
You maybe one of the younger ones that's like, this isn't my year.
The time.
This is my year.
That's true. I can see somebody doing
I don't see any of those people at all.
Well, I don't see her doing it, but you're right. It's somebody who's like, you know what, I have a long time where I can run for president, Cory Booker's going to have to drop out of the race because of his predilection for sex with dead people. So, I mean, that's going to be
I heard about that.
It's going to be a huge
I heard about that. I don't know where I heard it
from.
That
came out of left field. Who was expecting that one?
That's going to have to come up at the first debate, if he hasn't bowed out by then. But no, I would say if somebody... Well, somebody who tunes in now is like, wait, what? I would say if, as it gets closer, if somebody just has really disappointing numbers in terms of fundraising, somebody who maybe isn't the front runner, but at the lead of the pack is certainly somebody like Elizabeth Warren. But if she saw like, I'm just not raising money like I thought I would, and it's not, it's not about the money. But if you're not able to, get a bunch of people to text a $5 donation, you're gonna probably not get people that are motivated to even just in a primary actually go and vote for you.
I'm so sick of campaign emails and campaign texts already, and I have not donated to anybody yet.
Oh,
I just.
Are you just?
And I feel like I'm probably the norm.
Have you signed up for anything? I mean, you're just registered.
I'm on Kamala's list. Okay. I'm on Beto's list. I'm on Elizabeth Warren's list. I'm on Bernie's list. I'm so sick of campy. I joked. I'm like, I'm gonna be Republican by June just because I'm sick of emails.
Well, they don't send you anything, do they?
But then they'll start.
That's why. That's why.
Forget what you are, then they'll start.
You're gonna get a tweet at Hey Tamra from there is definitely somebody who's considering doing a primary challenge to Trump, but
William Weld.
Yeah,
I think he's already filed his paperwork.
Yeah, so there you go.
I don't think he's gonna make it very
By the way, you want to talk about next person to drop out. We were talking about Democrats, but Bill Weld's gonna get a call.
Yeah, I mean, VP candidate for Garrett Johnson, former Massachusetts governor. I don't
Where's
see
Garrett
him
Johnson? Where's
going
he
very
been?
far.
Where did he
probably
get back
enjoying
in?
smoking pot in New Mexico, not having
one of three Mexicos.
Yes.
Anyway,
the newest of the Mexicos.
I don't think we learned anything this week, but I think we tried. We had fun. Actually, we learned something
Cory
really
Booker.
important. Yeah.
We did.
I know, we're not going to say it again. You're going to have to rewatch the episode to find out. There was a bombshell revelation about Cory Booker.
Oh, wow.
I can't believe it.
I can't wait till the memes come out.
Yeah.
Actually going to be pretty great. They're going to be like
it'll be like that
zombies from
the Sixth Sense, Haley Joel Osment from the Sixth Sense going, he has sex with dead people.
I was just going to say like Weekend with Bernie's too. You're just going to have a bunch of those, It'd be great.
If anybody listening or watching wants to make any of those, please tweet them at Trump Report ABTV. And if you would like to follow me on Twitter or Instagram, I'm at Christian DMZ. Tamra, where do people find you?
You can follow me on Twitter at HeyTamra_.
And Scott?
And you can follow me arguing with, one-sided to Mitch McConnell at SMan80.
What if just once he writes back, like accidentally?
He doesn't know how to use the
like
internet.
Somebody in his
or
office,
his social media
somebody
director.
In his office just writes back "F you" and they didn't mean to.
That's so great. That's what I hope for every day.
Every day, that's what he hopes
That's why
for.
I do it.
Anyway, thanks to everybody who joined us in the chat and watching live or archived. We will see you next Tuesday at 4 Pacific, 7 Eastern. Until then, have a good one, everybody.
Bye.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.